I prioritized being liked over being honest. For most of my adult life, I was considered a good person to talk to. People came to me with problems. They left feeling better. I had a reputation, not explicitly stated, but communicated through repeated behavior, as someone who understood, who didn't judge, who always found the right thing to say. What I didn't understand, for a long time, was that this reputation had been built on a specific strategy. I was withholding the things I actually thought. Not lying. The distinction matters. I wasn't fabricating comfort or manufacturing false reassurance from nothing. What I was doing was selecting. From everything I observed and concluded about a person's situation, I would choose the pieces that would land well, the validating pieces, the affirming ones, and leave the rest in place, unstated, present in my mind but absent from the conversation. The edited version was true. It was simply incomplete in a direction that was never accidental. I had been doing this long enough that it no longer felt like editing. It felt like kindness. Priya was a colleague I had worked alongside for 3 years. She was preparing a major presentation, something that would be seen by people above both of us, something that carried professional weight. She showed me the draft. She asked what I thought. The presentation had a structural problem. Not a minor one. The central argument rested on a data comparison that didn't hold when you examined the sourcing. 2 figures from different methodological frameworks, presented as directly equivalent. Anyone who looked closely would see it. The people she was presenting to would look closely. This was not a judgment call about style or approach, it was a factual inconsistency that would surface in the room and undermine the credibility of everything around it. I did not tell her this. I told her the narrative arc was strong, which it was. I told her the opening was compelling, which it was. I asked a question about one of the secondary slides, something gentle, something she could address without restructuring, and let her leave the conversation feeling affirmed. The presentation happened. The inconsistency surfaced. Not dramatically, no public humiliation, no obvious rupture, but the questions it produced in the room changed the texture of how the work was received. Something that had been positioned as a conclusion became, in the moment, a discussion. Priya knew the difference. She had to navigate it in real time. She didn't come back to me afterward to debrief. That gap, which had not existed before, told me what I needed to know. What I found myself examining, in the weeks after, was not whether I had made the right call. I knew, by then, that I had not. What I was examining was the internal process that had produced the call, the thing I had actually been optimizing for in that room when she showed me the draft and asked what I thought. I had been optimizing for her immediate state. For the feeling she would have leaving the conversation. I wanted her to leave feeling prepared and confident, and I had prioritized that feeling over the information she actually needed. And the reason I had prioritized it, this is the part that required the most honesty to see, was not solely or even primarily about her. It was about me. About what I would be, in her eyes, after the conversation. The advisor who found the problem, or the supporter who believed in her. I had, without consciously deciding to, chosen the role that would leave her with warmer feelings toward me. This is the mechanism. Approval-seeking and honesty exist in direct tension when the honest thing is uncomfortable. The approval seeker resolves that tension by editing the honest thing out. Over time, this editing becomes automatic. It happens before you've consciously identified there was a choice to make. The likable version of the response has been generated and delivered before the accurate version has even fully formed. The cost of this process, paid over years, is that you become someone whose approval means nothing. Not because people dislike you, they often like you very much. But because they learn, at some level, that you are not a reliable source of the difficult information. They bring you the things they want validated. They stop bringing you the things where they need to know the truth. The relationship narrows. And they go elsewhere, to to the people who will tell them the thing that is harder to hear, for the conversations that actually matter. Being liked and being trustworthy are different qualities. They often coexist, but they are not the same, and when they conflict, which they do, in the moments that count, only one of them is actually useful to the person in front of you. What changed was a deliberate restructuring of the internal sequence. The question I began asking myself, before responding, was not what will land well here, but what would I want someone to tell me if our positions were reversed? That question produced different answers. Not always uncomfortable ones, often the honest observation and the kind one are the same. But when they diverged, the second question gave me access to the divergence in a way the first had not. The practice of saying the uncomfortable thing has a specific texture in the body. There is a resistance, not large, not dramatic, but real and present, right before you say it. A brief and familiar pull toward the version that will be received better. Learning to move through that resistance without stopping has been a gradual process. I still feel it. I feel it now less as a deterrent and more as a signal. Here is the place where the honest thing is. This is where it lives. Priya and I have spoken since. The gap closed, slowly, over time. What I have not done is tell her directly about the decision I made that day, what I saw, what I withheld, what it cost her. That is a conversation I have not yet had. Whether to have it is a separate question from the one I am describing here. What I know is that I did not serve her that day, and that I would serve her differently now. The reputation I was building, as someone good to talk to, was built on a foundation that could not hold the weight of a moment that required something real. When that moment came, there was nothing there. Only the accumulated habit of telling people what they were glad to hear, calling it kindness, and leaving myself out of the difficulty. Likability built on avoidance is not a relationship. It is a management strategy. And the person it manages most effectively is the one doing the managing. Here is what I carry forward from this, and what I hope might be useful if you recognize any part of your own story in mine. The pattern I described does not operate because we are careless or unintelligent or unaware. It operates because it has a function, because it is doing something for us that we have not found another way to do. Staying in the wrong situation, staying silent when we should speak, not walking away when the door is right there, all of these behaviors persist because they are solving something, even if imperfectly. They are providing some version of comfort or protection or identity that we have not yet found a better way to provide. Understanding that function is the first move. Not judging the behavior, but asking honestly, what is this doing for me? What would I have to give up if I stopped? What am I afraid will happen if I make the change I know I need to make? Those questions do not dissolve the pattern automatically. But they make it visible in a new way. And visibility changes the relationship to the thing. When you can see what something is doing, you can start to choose whether you want it to keep doing it. The change that followed was not easier because I understood the mechanism. It was the same difficulty. But I went into it knowing what I was moving through rather than being entirely inside it without perspective. That perspective is what I want to pass on here. Not the specific story. The structure. The shape of how we stay in things longer than we should, how we look away from things we can see, how we tell ourselves the thing will change without giving it a mechanism for changing. You are not alone in this. It is not a character flaw. It is how the human nervous system manages uncertainty and fear. But you can do something different. The doing starts with the looking. Look at it. Directly. Honestly. Without the story that makes it easier to carry. And then decide what you want to do with what you see. That decision, fully conscious and fully yours, is the only kind that actually changes anything. There is also something I want to say about the specific moment of turning toward rather than away, the moment when you actually do the thing you have been not doing. Because that moment has a texture that I was not prepared for, and that I think is worth naming so you know what to expect when you reach it. It does not feel like relief. Not at first. The moment of change, of finally having the conversation, or walking away, or saying the thing, or making the decision, often feels worse before it feels better. There is a period of acute discomfort in which the old equilibrium has been disturbed but the new one has not yet settled. You have stopped managing the avoidance, which means the thing you were avoiding is now fully present, no longer softened by distance. That period is real and it is temporary. I want to say both of those things with equal emphasis. It is real, do not be surprised by it, do not mistake it for evidence that you made the wrong choice. And it is temporary, it has a duration, and that duration is almost always shorter than the years of management that preceded it. The other side of that period is different. Not perfect, change does not produce perfection. But different in the specific way of someone who has stopped spending energy on maintaining something and can now spend that energy somewhere else. The ambient cost disappears. The weight that you had normalized as simply the weight of life turns out to have been specific and removable. I have felt that release more than once. Each time it is instructive about how much I had been carrying that I didn't know I was carrying. You probably know what you're carrying. You just haven't decided to put it down yet. When you decide, it will be hard first and better after. That is almost always the order of things. And the better, when it arrives, is real. What I notice now, in the life I have after the story I told here, is a kind of attentiveness I didn't have before. Not anxiety, that's different. Anxiety is looking for the thing that might go wrong. What I have is more like a quiet, ongoing check-in. Am I here because I want to be? Am I saying what I actually think? Am I moving toward what matters or managing around something I haven't named? These questions don't produce constant disruption. Most of the time the answer is, yes, I am where I want to be, saying what I think, moving in the right direction. The check-in confirms what I thought. And that confirmation is itself valuable, it builds a different relationship with my own choices. They feel more like choices and less like things happening to me. On the occasions when the answer is different, when the check-in reveals an avoidance or a suppression or a staying too long, I try to act on the information faster than I used to. Not immediately, not impulsively. But without the elaborate deferral structure. Without the "I'll address this when the conditions are better." The conditions will not be better. They will be different. Different is workable. Better is a fiction. I am the only condition that changes. And I change through the practice of looking and then acting on what I see. That's the whole thing. The looking and the acting. Over and over. For as long as it takes. Which is your whole life. But a whole life spent actually inside it is worth more than a whole life spent at the edge of it, managing the view. I know which one I want. I think you do too.